lower as we had GameStop testimony on Capitol Hill, and we got initial jobless claims numbers that were higher than expected, with 861,000 people filing for unemployment benefits. Dow down 119 at 31,493. The NASDAQ was off by 100 points at 13,865. The S&P down 17.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. They're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 18th, 2021. Cuando Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's still quite chilly down here in the south. I guess we should have took the plight of Senator Ted Cruz out of Texas. The state froze up and he went down to Mexico and left all the citizens behind. But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders.
Yeah.
They never leave anybody behind.
So much for that wall. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. He'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love Paulson. It's amazing. POTUS is trying to build a wall, and now good old boys are going into Mexico. But I will never build a wall on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, it's a very difficult situation for our veterans in America. As you think on a daily basis, we lose over 2 dozen a day to suicide, a very horrific number, Charlton. I understand that this country is going through a lot of plight right now. The devastation is going on down in Texas, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, Charlton. But we've had the pandemic of suicide amongst American veterans for decades.
Yeah.
And this country has never done anything to address that issue. It needs to become more apparent from everybody that the suicide amongst the veterans needs to be dealt with on an American level.
Yeah.
And we need to do all we can beyond just the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, that we give out, and the words that people will say, thank you for your service.
Yep.
Their service provided a way of life for all Americans.
Yeah.
To even be going through this pandemic, our veterans provided a way of life for us to be able to do that and get through it, Charlton. We have to find a way as a nation to get our veterans out of this suicide pandemic.
Yeah, I love doing our part, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely get our veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage on the wholesale side. Really looking forward to that. Big C, I think as we were talking about so many things that happen in this country, I just thought about something that you had said. I think you said Ted Cruz, he was behind, the former POTUS trying to build a wall instead of spending time focusing on how to make sure the energy grid was up in Texas. Now they're all leaving for Mexico. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've been told for the past 2 decades that the energy grid in Texas, Charlton, would fail. But Ted Cruz decided to leave the state because it was cold and take his family down to Mexico where it was nice and warm, saying that his family needed some time together and get away from everything. But he left all his constituents behind, Charlton. Think about the family members who have small kids in Texas and have no way to keep them warm. They're walking around looking for scrap wood and fallen trees, trying to put something in the fireplace to keep their kids in their homes warm, and yet Ted Cruz jumps on a government plane and goes down to Mexico.
Yeah, goes down to Mexico on a government plane. If it wasn't true, it would be a joke, but it's true. That's what the good old boys are doing. It's all fair and love and war. I'm telling you, Big C, I think about Black history. You know, we're still in Black History Month. I think we should propose. I'm going to write a letter to propose to President Biden and Kamala Harris for Black History Day, because we do Black History every day, Big C, if that makes sense to you. But I think about this. In the Civil War, 186,000 black men fought for the United States military and were promised freedom and opportunity, and we did not get it. At that same time of the Civil War, there were many black women also doing domesticated work, oftentimes for free, Big C. In World War II, 856,000 black men fought in the armed services in the United States of America. We were promised freedom and equality, did not get it. During the Vietnam War, Big C, 300,000 black Americans served in the United States military, and yet we face police brutality, racism, segregation, inequality in America. Black GIs were 33% of the United States military forces, 33%, Big C, in Vietnam, but only were about 11% of the population in the United States of America. As black Americans, we fought foreign wars for American on foreign soils. White Americans have fought against black Americans on American soils. Isn't that crazy, Big C? We still have the insurrection after all the times that black Americans have voted and also fought for this country. There are people trying to take away the vote still, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the government is trying to take away the vote, Charlton, just as the government has. During the Vietnam War, there was an improprietary number of black people versus white people fighting for America.
Yeah.
And yet we had to go and fight a foreign country, Charlton, and then come back home and fight for our rights in America, and still are doing that in 2021.
Yeah, it's crazy because oftentimes when we talk about we shall overcome, we have overcome. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday as part of the Council of Elders, Big C, and he grew up down in Alabama, and he talked about one of his uncles was actually a part of Tuskegee Airmen, Big C. One of his uncles was part of Tuskegee Airmen. They never lost a fighter pilot, Big C, and that's probably why we were so successful as a country. But going back to black Americans, you think about black Americans deserving so much better in this country. Think about this. To save the soul of America, we must consider ourselves and even convince ourselves at times that we must not limit the certain rights of black Americans, but instead affirm the conviction that the Americans would never be free without our help, Big C, or saved from itself until the descendants of slaves, who's loose completely from the shackles that they still wear, sometimes politically, again, still trying to take away the vote. Black people's struggle over the centuries has created all that America enjoys today. And when we fight against black Americans, and we also fight against Americans, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if that fight is ever going to come to an end, because you look at the insurrection here in 2021, Charlton, in the United States of America. White people fighting to separate this country all over again. Doing things in the nation's capital that had never been done, Charlton, even 150 years ago when they had a civil war.
Yeah. White
people didn't do those things. You think about what Donald Trump did in America. He awoken racism all over again in America. Told everybody that it was chic to go back 150 years and treat minorities the way that you were able to treat them 150 years ago.
Yeah.
When you look at the people that are in law enforcement, Charlton, that were part of that insurrection going on in Washington, D.C., these are the same people that kill black people on the street with impunity, Charlton. that treat minorities differently than they treat white people. We saw that on the assault on the Capitol, Charlton.
Yeah.
So to say that there's progress being made, yes, there has. But there's also been the loss of that progress through white society, Charlton.
You know, there's I know a lot of people, because the election's over, it's only over on the count. It's not over in how they're trying to go back and change things in 2022 and 2024. But I was listening to a great comedian by the name of Dave Chappelle, and how he had to exercise his power to get his rights back and money back, etc. But he talked about something that we've noticed, and I've noticed too. We talked about the Civil War and Vietnam War and World War I and World War II. Well, you think about this in the United States of America, as we're all fascinated on watching the game. Who won the game, Big C? The militarization of police is use of military equipment and tactics by law enforcement officers. This includes the use of armored personnel carriers, assault rifles, submachine guns, flashbang grenades, and grenade launchers, sniper rifles, and special weapons, Big C, and also tactics teams. That's a lot different than Mayberry RFD when they were there to serve and protect the public, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they only use those in minority communities. They've declared war on minority communities in America. There's no need for that type of assault material to be in America, on American soil, against American citizens.
Yeah.
But it's not, as they think about it, against American citizens.
Yeah.
It's against people of color. They didn't use that stuff at the Capitol in Washington, D.C.
No.
Those people were assaulting the nation.
Yeah.
Think about it, if it had been black people attacking the nation's capital, Charlton, how many body bags they would have had to use that day.
Yeah, and I think it's ironic because we turn to pacify, like Malcolm X said, they want to pacify you, so they send you sports to pacify people. And we know it's properly worked oftentimes, and people can celebrate black history however they want to, but most of our brethren on a sports program, they only talk about what an athlete did. They don't talk about the reason we have sports today, because we have freedom. A lot of freedoms are existing because black Americans fought in wars and still deal with the garbage. So I love bringing that up, and I hope that people pay attention as we go forward in this great country called the United States of America. Big C, I want to go to the land down under, not literally like Ted Cruz took his family on a plane to go down to Mexico. The land, I mean, if they built the wall and the wall's not completed, couldn't they have just walked to Mexico? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, that was too tough of a journey for him to have to walk out there, Charlton. Fly down there on the government and taxpayers' dime. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, they said they were going to build a wall so the Mexicans couldn't walk to the country, but they used an airplane to fly. It's all fair and level war. Some things are just crazy. Ted Cruz is really a knucklehead, Big C. I want to go to the land down under, and they didn't try to build a wall to keep Australians from coming to America, but I do want to congratulate something we talked about yesterday, the great Naomi Osaka. I believe she's only 23 years old, Big C. She beat Serena Williams. She advanced to the 2021 Australian Open final. And when I think about her, she's 23, Serena is 39, so I know that she was in her crib with a bottle watching Serena do her thing, and she learned some of her great skills, Big C. I still don't think Serena's finished. She'll probably keep playing tennis for another 2 solid years, at least I hope so. But Naomi Osaka, 1 win away from a 4th career Grand Slam title, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, she's one of the more dominant females on the circuit these days, Charlton. As I stated to you yesterday, physically, Serena Williams cannot play at that level any longer. If she plays too many tournaments, she has no legs when it gets down to that point. She has to cut herself down like Tiger Woods has done. Play 2-3 tournaments a year, Charlton, trying to capture a title. But she can't play consistently on the circuit and be competitive. Yeah,
that's so much beauty in the game of tennis, especially when you try to play it yourself and you realize just how good they are. I think about Naomi Osaka, number 3 in the world right now, defeated number 10, Serena Williams. There were so many years over the last 2 decades, we got used to seeing Serena Williams as the number 1 tennis player in the universe, Big C. But think about this. In straight sets, 6-3 to 6-4, the 2021 Australian Open semifinals Wednesday at Rod Laver Arena. And it really means that Williams remains just 1 Grand Slam championship shy of Margaret Court's record of 24. And I wonder if people understand it's taken 2 decades to come just one shy, and she's lost the last couple of her tournaments. But just think about it this too. She's also given birth, and to have childbirth and then to come out and compete the way that she does and still to be the number 10 ranked tennis player in the world, Big C, that's still amazing for Serena. I hope she has another 2 years left in her, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, rankings are always fine, Charlton, but you play to win the tournaments. You don't play just for rankings.
Yeah.
And she's lost in the last 4 majors that she's been in, Charlton, showing that the level of competition has risen around her and her skills have diminished. I mean, we always look at great athletes and want to relish in them, Charlton, but everybody's times come eventually where you just can't go out there and knock off the top players in the world.
Yeah, Father Time is undefeated, Big C, but it does mean that when you think about it, just one shy of Margaret Court's record. I doubt if she'll retire without having that record, Big C. It was a high-profile matchup, and the entire tennis universe wanted to see what happened, Big C, and the women's single draw was released, and it marked the 4th chapter in their head-to-head history, Big C. When you think about it, they've done it 4 times, and for Osaka to be just 23 years old, and she's already played 4 times against arguably the best tennis player in the universe in Serena Williams, Big C. That shows a lot more hope that at 23, she's already knocked off one of the world's best. The future, if she plays until she's 39, what amazing future she'll have, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if she'll play till she's 39. I mean, it was rarefied air that Serena came around in. You think about her sister Venus, who hasn't been as competitive as Serena, Charlton, and they're only a year apart.
Yeah.
So when you look at where Naomi is right now versus where Serena is right now, Serena, struggled in her last 2 matches. She got beat by Naomi. She struggled in the match prior to that. It was taken to 4 sets, Charlton. So you can see that time had caught up with her, and she just did not have the dominant skills to put her last 2 opponents away.
Yeah, and only women can understand what I'm going to say. When a man and a woman have a child, the woman goes through a lot of changes. Physically, obviously, emotionally, probably as much. And then to still come back and be on top of the universe. Really proud of Serena. I know they were asking her questions after a loss, and she got emotional about it, and she said, I'm done. She didn't mean she's done from tennis. She was just done with the interview. I think she's amazing, but I still want to pay homage to Osaka. The young woman, 23 years old, won 2 of the first 3 matchups, including the 2018 Open Final, Big C. However, Williams won the most recent matchup, 2019, and that was in the beautiful country of Toronto, Canada, Big C, and is dominant at the Australian Open with 7 titles on her resume. She's going to keep climbing that ladder. We talk about the world of football and basketball where the great Bill Russell has 11 championships, but he did it in team sport. And then you have Jordan with 6 championships, Brady with 7 championships, Tiger Woods with 15 majors, Big C, the great Jack with 18. Imagine, people kind of take for granted that for a woman to have 23 championships, Big C, and we always look at that as ancillary to what the men do, Big C. But that's amazing, Big C. Your thoughts?
She's been one of the most dominant athletes in the world, Charlton, throughout her career.
Yeah, and I wish it was nothing but the best. She's not walking away. Nothing but the best for the great Serena Williams. And Naomi, you're doing your thing. They're going to have to put a plaque in her name for some type of award because she's shown a lot of young women how to get out there and do their thing on the tennis court. I want to go back to the United States, and unlike Ted Cruz that took American tax dollars and flew down to Mexico, he didn't want to walk over the wall that he said that the Mexicans were coming over. He's too lazy to walk over the wall. He decided to fly over the wall. If Ted Cruz can fly over the wall, can't the people they want to keep out of the country fly too? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think they do have flights from Mexico into the U.S. It's just, There was a racism move on Donald Trump's behalf. He wanted to get his base all riled up that I'm going to eliminate people of color coming to the United States.
Yeah, they're going to fly as if people that they're trying to keep out don't get airline tickets, especially coming from Europe, Big C, when they're trying to cut down on paraphernalia coming into the country. But I want to look at baseball because we talk about so many things. It is Black History Month, but really, I want to ask Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We want to petition Congress for Black History Day since we talk about Black history and so many things. Big C, Major League Baseball. There's so much money in this sport. Fernando Tatis Victory Jr. emerged the face of baseball. Tatis is amazing. He agreed to a 14-year, $340 million contract extension. Okay, like people put extensions in their brains, Big C. An extension with the San Diego Padres, and that was done on Wednesday, securing one of the largest guarantees in American sports history, and is wedding himself with the team in which he quickly established himself as really a bona fide star. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, baseball is amazing within itself. When its players sign contracts, their money is guaranteed, not like in other professional sports, Charlton.
Yeah.
When they put the money on the table, that's the money you're going to get.
Yep.
And Tatis has become one of the budding young superstars at shortstop in the major leagues. And so what they're doing is solidifying a cornerstone of their franchise, hoping to make a move in the NL West.
Yeah, and they will make a move in the if they don't make a move on the diamond, Big C, at least they'll make a move to the bank, because that's a lot of money for a player that has the same complexion that Trump and Cruz wanted to keep out of the country, Big C. When you think about that, people just want to have the same opportunities that they have, if that makes sense to you. So I think that's a lot of money for a young person. Again, he's 22 years old. We just talked about Naomi Osaka being 23 years old, Big C. Wool to be young again. 22 will receive the third largest deal in baseball history. And so far, think about this. The younger age than Mike Trout at the time, who's never won anything, and Mookie Betts, who's just won another championship with the Dodgers, had also won with the Boston Red Sox, Big C, both of whom signed their mega deals. Big C, they were 27 years old. Tatis, he's 6'3", 217 pounds. He dazzles like Ozzie Newsome back in the day at shortstop, and perhaps exceeded by his prowess at the plate. He's not only dominant in the field, but also at the plate, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, an all-around young baseball player, Charlton, and when you talk about his ripe old age of 22, that means he's going to be around for a long time. He hasn't even gotten close to his prime or how good he will be in the major league.
Yeah, and when you think about him, I know baseball's been on the pause for the most part. We had the bubble where the Dodgers won the World Series. Back in Texas, they had to go to Texas and play their game against Tampa Bay Rays. And now, so we missed a lot of what happens with baseball. They're going to start allowing some fans back in stadiums. I think down in Miami, the Marlins are going to allow about 9,000 fans a game. But when you think about, we always pay homage to the Say Hey Kid when we open our program, the great Willie Mays, and also the great Barry Bonds, the home run leader, pay homage to them whenever we open our show. But when you watch a guy like Tatis, he makes a lot more money than Mays ever made, more than Bonds made. He has a stature a lot like Barry Bonds, but maybe a little bit faster and is quicker in the infield, it seems. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, times have changed over the decades when all those players played. When you think about the money that was in the game, it was relevant to what was going on in society. You look at the money that all professional athletes make nowadays, Charlton, in these mega $100 million deals that they have. I mean, that was more than the whole salary of all these teams back in the 60s.
Yeah, it really was. And so I know he's going to spend the money wisely. Obviously, it's hard to outspend that amount of money over 14 years, and that's just an extension. So when you think about the sports universe and how much money people are making in the world of sports, I want people to go back 100 years ago. Money in sports 100 years ago considered the golden age of the sports universe. When it comes to sports, it was starting to flourish, Big C. If you think about baseball, you think about golf, boxing, there was tennis and football. It saw exponential growth after World War I, Big C. World War I ended in 1918. The average pro baseball player, don't choke when I tell you this, the average baseball player back in the 20s when it started to expand was about $5,000 per year, Big C. Today, Los Angeles Angels, Mike Trout, he's set to make over $37,100,000 in 2021 for this season, not including endorsement money, and Trout has never won a championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but Charlton, also in 1920, the average price of an American home was just around $4,800 to $5,000. A loaf of bread was a nickel.
Yeah.
So everything, when you think about time of how it's moved along, is relevant. I mean, when we look over the time of professional athletes and think about how many professional athletes have made hundreds of millions of dollars and never won a championship, you're only going to get one team every year to win a championship.
Yeah.
Barry Bonds never won a World Series. So when you look at these guys over time, it's about having the players around you that will help you win. Nobody's going to win it by themselves.
Yeah, well, Mookie Betts might disagree, but he came as close as possible as winning it by himself, saving the Dodgers skin a couple of times in the 2020 World Series. But when you think about it and how sports really, it galvanizes people, it brought the country together. After wars, Big C, people needed a way to have some type of synergy and some nationalism. It was after World War I, America was eager to learn to play. Not to set up and dribble, but to learn and play. As a result, sports grew and flourished in the 20s, as we talked about. Think about it also. One of the reasons that it was called the golden age of sports is because of extraordinary athletes. They emerged in every sport, Big C. And athletes were nothing like today, Big C. The guys making big money, as you talked about. Oftentimes, we hear about the steroids and the HGH. They didn't have that back in the 20s. I think all they did was some type of snuff. But also because of what's going on with promoters and also the media that's made sports grow the way it has so far. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they call it the golden age of sports, Charlton, because blacks weren't allowed to compete in the major leagues. Only thing blacks were in a limited basis, Charlton, was professional boxing, and there was so few of them boxing at that time. So whites, dominated sports, and that's the reason why it got the name the Golden Age.
Yeah, the Golden Age, but also you can't be remiss on the fact that black Americans have played sports for many, many years and had their own leagues. They were not trying to be a part of an ancillary part of a sports industry. They had their own success in boxing, had their own success playing baseball, even golf, and so many things, soccer all over the world. So it was not just being limited by America. They've been playing sports all over the world, but it did grow a lot more here in the United States. And speaking of sports that's grown all over the universe, Big C, when you think about pro sports, I want to get Big C's thoughts on the contracts and the pro sports, Big C, and how it's changed lives. Juxtapose that to the stimulus plan that people are fighting against, saying $600 is too much to give people who are unemployed. It's all fair, love, and war. The number one sports contract in the universe, when you think about it, Big C, Lionel Messi. He's not in the United States of America. $637 million. He plays with FC Barcelona, also part of the Argentina national team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he has a world contract because soccer is a world sport, Charlton. When you're an athlete and you can go by one name that you're recognized by as Messi, they don't even know his name is Lionel.
Yeah.
Everybody knows him by as Messi, but he's been the world of soccer for the past decade.
Yeah, he's been doing his thing, and not many people realize that all he does is kick a ball for a living. He doesn't have to hit a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. Doesn't have to take on a 320-pound lineman. It doesn't have to try to dunk a basketball over a 7-foot-tall basketball player. Just kick the ball. It's a lot harder done than it is said. But congratulations, Lionel Messi, with that $637 million contract. Number 2 and number 1 in the United States universe, the great touchdown Patrick Mahomes was amazing in Super Bowl 55 against all the odds, Big C. He makes $503 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, it's not all in one year, but that's still a lot of money, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the only problem with those NFL contracts, Charlton, it is not guaranteed money. They're going to restructure his contract probably in another 3 years to make it more cap-friendly, because who knows where the cap is going to be. It's going down this year, but they're going to have to do that to be able to put players around him to protect him.
Yeah, they got to put players around him to protect him. He's already had a knee injury a couple of years ago. Hopefully he will stay injury-free, but football, and even when you think about soccer, they're both contact sports. Soccer nowhere near as difficult to play as football as a contact sport. Before we come up on the number 3rd person in the sports universe, we're going to take what's called the Big C pause. And when we come back, I want to talk more about money and get Big C's thoughts on the biggest contracts in the sports universe. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. I want to say thank you for following Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on the number 1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and the Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up anywhere in the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Big C number 3 on that list of so much money that they could never spend it in their lifetime, even if they try it, Big C. And I know some guys have tried. You look at Mike Trout, $426 million contract. He plays for the LA Angels, but they most likely will never see a World Series. Big C, your thoughts? All right, Big C, we're having a little bit of problem with the phone line. I know a lot of the phone lines are frozen, and maybe that's what Ted Cruz is leaving to Mexico so he can get some phone service because the phone lines are frozen in Texas. They didn't take care of the grid. But Mike Trout, the number 3 guy in the sports universe, $426 million, plays for the Angels. Most likely they don't have the pitching, and they will not win a World Series with him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's the epitome of what an athlete is, Charlton. He's a guy who has all the personal statistics that you need. It's a matter of getting your teammates to play at the level that you play. But Mike Trout has earned every dime of the contract that he has.
Yeah, some people say not so fast, my friend. I told you last year, the best player in L.A. is Mookie Betts. It's not Mike Trout. He plays at Chavez Ravine Dodger Stadium, and he has the championship there to match at Big C. Number 4 in the sports universe, boxing. You talk about a tough living. Boxing used to be considered the most difficult way to earn a living until MMA was developed, and now MMA is the toughest way to earn a living. But when you look at boxing, Canelo Alvarez, Big C, signed a $365 million contract, and that's for boxing. Could you imagine getting paid $350 or $365 million just to get beat up? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, that's when you have a part of the game, and when you look at the closed circuit television that they have now in boxing and all fighting professional sports, Charlton, you want to get a piece of that. And Canelo Alvarez has come along and wiped out the middleman called a promoter and taken control of his own destiny.
Isn't that something? I think when I grew up listening to boxing, there was always the great Don King. There was Bob Arum. You know, all the guys that loved you until you lost the fight. Then they loved the person that beat you in the fight, Big C. But, you know, they're businessmen, too. What is it about an Alvarez, and I even want to say Floyd Money Mayweather, they're not like the guys that fought and ended up broke. Big C, we heard so many boxers that ended up broke because they were taken advantage of by the guys that said they loved them. But so what is it about this nouveau riche kind of guy that they get part of the deal where they don't get taken advantage of as much? Big C, your thoughts?
It's not that they get part of the deal, they get all the deal. Both of those fighters, Charlton, they're eliminated promoters. When you look at Floyd Mayweather, he bought himself from underneath Bob Arum. You look at Alvarez, he bought himself from underneath Golden Boy Productions, Charlton, and formed their own promotion companies. Other boxers didn't have that power or the tenacity to understand how the business worked decades ago. Yeah,
they didn't have that, and even there's still a lot of, it's a tough business, and I know men and women that get into the fight game, mostly in the MMA style, it's a lot of glamour and not a lot left after it's all stripped off the bone, if that makes sense to you. Big C, I was telling you, the best player that I think in baseball, at least for now, is number 5 in the sports universe, the great Mookie Betts. Big C, $365 million, plays for the LA Dodgers, won a World Series with the Dodgers, and I would say at one time you could say single-handedly the way he would rob players of home runs and also the way he runs the bases. Big C, haven't seen a player as dominant as he is in the outfield and the infield in a long time. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, he's a tremendous talent on the major league level, Charlton. I mean, he came over to the Dodgers in a trade from Boston, where they had finished last place in the East the previous year, Charlton. He came over to the Dodgers and had a lot more field talent, and all of it culminated in a World Series championship.
Yeah, it really did. So it's amazing. He's not the biggest guy in the world. I think when I think about the most dominant baseball player I've ever seen hit a baseball, it was Barry Bonds. And prior to Barry Bonds, it was, you know, I would say Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, but prior to them, saw Reggie Jackson when I was a young boy. And the way he would tear the cover off the baseball, never thought I would see that again, but it's amazing. The fastest runner of the bases that I can recall is Ricky Henderson, the stolen base leader in Major League Baseball. I'm not saying Mookie Betts runs like Ricky Henderson, but when you think about guys that can do everything well, I would say Ricky Henderson was the best, most complete baseball player I've ever seen. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'll step back in time and look at a few others. When I think about Ernie Banks, I think about Frank Robertson, Hank Aaron, and even Willie Mays. Charlton, you want to talk about complete baseball players? When you look at those players statistically and see what they did throughout their career, it's hard to find equals. And even Willie Mays lost 2 years out of his major league career because he went and served in World War II.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war, Big C. There's so many great wins, but the base running, I don't think there was ever anyone like Ricky. Ricky would say Ricky's about to take off. Ricky's going to steal second. And Ricky, I guess he was doing the Drew Boudini Brown, self-motivate himself before he stole bases. At also number 6 on the contract, Big C, you have Fernando Tatis Jr., $340 million for the San Diego Padres. This is a team that has a good structure, and they can make some noise in the National League West this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're going to challenge within the next couple of years for the Western title.
Yeah, they're doing a lot. I just love the fact that young men are making so much money now. They're making more than organizations used to make, going back over the years, especially over the last 25 years. It's really taken off, and I wish those men nothing but the best, and hopefully they'll do good with their newfound riches, Big C. I want to take you to the world of the NFL. Everybody has their own opinion about these musical chairs, but sometimes I guess the NFL has learned a lot from these dating websites. You can swipe left and you swipe right, and you end up in a different city, Big C. A lot of NFL teams told in 2021 that the salary cap is going to be a minimum of $180 million of free agency money, Big C, for a team. You think about the NFL informed its teams of that on Thursday. That's chump change compared to some of the baseball guys, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's for an entire team for a city, Charlton. I mean, baseball, that money's probably the same as it is in baseball. You're looking at the overall contract of a couple of big-name players. But that's an $18 million reduction, Charlton, in cap space for teams going into the 2021 season.
Yeah,
that means that some veteran players are going to have to go out and get a new job at less of an income, Charlton, because the money is just not going to be there. So you're going to see a lot of free agent movement here in the offseason.
Yeah, maybe the new job they got to get is advertisement and promotion and sponsorship. I doubt if they're going to be working at Burger King serving up the Big C burger. It is a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats, and it goes great with the Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, and it goes great with the Big C burger. Big C, last year the NFL and the NFLPA agreed to a minimum cap number of $175 million. So while the $180 million is the floor for now, it remains possible that the final 2021 salary cap is going to be higher than that. And while the cap received a boost from what was originally agreed upon, it will be significantly lower than last year's, barring unforeseen circumstances. COVID-19's put a lot of people on pause. Last year's salary cap was set at $198.2 million, marking the 7th consecutive year that the cap had increased. The 2020 cap number was a $10 million increase from 2019, but they got to all make adjustments to make the money come in. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, everything changed under COVID-19, Charles. You got to look at all the lost revenue that the NFL had to endure from playing in empty stadiums and lost concessions, just lost overall money, Charleston. So the money's not there, and it's going to hit people in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
Players and teams are going to have to make some serious consideration.
Yeah, there's a lot of shopping malls in the United States that are owned by companies that are in Paris, France, Big C, and they're closing down major stores in shopping malls where a lot of people could go and have libations and restaurants. Some major household names closing the doors, Big C, as a lot of people are just buying online now. And I'm sure Bezos appreciates that. Why go to the mall where you can buy online? It's all fair in love and war. And speaking of love and war, and speaking of swipe left and swipe right, Big C, NFL football, Big Ben Roethlisberger, he's going to need a new deal, maybe even a new team. In the event that Big Ben is not with the Steelers in 2021, he can still count for $22.25 million against their cap on his original deal, Big C. He's set to receive $41.25 million, and both sides have acknowledged that a return would need a restructural deal that brings that number down. But I also believe, and Tomlin's going to do whatever he wants to do, if they're going to look for a hope of winning another Super Bowl, they have to be realistic. It's probably not going to come with Ben Roethlisberger. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Steelers got a lot of players, Charlton, that they're looking to replace in this upcoming season. They have 8 free agents on their roster, Charlton. They had a couple other players retire. So there's a huge depth gap in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and defense. And Ben Roethlisberger is a big part of that as far as his contract.
Yeah, well, let me ask, and it's just an opinion. No one's knocking anybody that's playing this game at a high level, and especially making, multiple millions of dollars, especially in a COVID-19 environment, Big C. If you were to look at Tom Brady, for instance, there are many people that say Tom Brady fell off, of course, over the last 2 years or so, even though he's been in the AFC Championship game. And then also, they were knocked out of the playoffs last year, but this year the Super Bowl when he joined the NFC. So he's dropped off in talent some, but he's surrounded by a lot of talent. If I can ask you a hypothetical question, if Big Ben Roethlisberger were playing in Tampa Bay this year, would we have seen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Super Bowl 55, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, the difference in Tampa Bay this year was cutting down on turnovers. I mean, Brady statistically wasn't much different than what Jameis Winston was when you look at the overall numbers. It's just he replaced those interceptions with touchdown passes.
Yeah.
The talent base that he had around him in Tampa Bay was upgraded also at the running back position, Charlton, and at the tight end position, and also that right offensive tackle. That defense was one of the best in the NFL. They were on that ascending course last year at the end of the season.
Yeah.
It's just they made the change at quarterback and got some big breaks in the playoffs and got to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works. Their defense won that game for them, but we know Brady will get the credit for it. No quarterback throwing for 200 yards set the world on fire. Defensively, they did a magnificent job. So maybe Big Ben will read between the lines. You might do better if you find a team that already has a solid defense and a lot of receivers, because the Steelers had a lot of drops last year also. I want to bring you to another quarterback in Pennsylvania, Big C. And that's, well, no longer, I guess he did what Ted Cruz did. They got on the airplane and he flew to Indianapolis, Indiana. The Philadelphia Eagles, they've agreed to trade quarterback Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts. Yesterday you were saying he would either be with the Colts or the Bears. So he got the Colts for a 2021 third-round draft pick and a conditional 2022 second-round pick that could turn into a first-rounder. But I know everybody has their own opinion about Carson Wentz. Give me your feeling on how he may or may not help Indianapolis. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, I think he's good for at least one more victory in Indianapolis, where they won 11 this past season. I think they'll win 12 games next year and win their division. You think about him being reunited with Frank Reich. The last time he and Frank Reich was together, Carson Wentz was ascending to be the potential NFL MVP until he tore up his knee down in Los Angeles, Charlton. He was leading the NFL quarterback basically in all categories. So to get him back with his mentor, who had him fixed after his rookie year in the NFL where he struggled and turned everything around in his second year, I think that familiarity, he's going to an offense that he already knows, Charlton. You think about the talent upgrade around him. We always praise quarterbacks on how well they play. But without the talent around you, you're not going to play well. Ask Patrick Mahomes when you don't have an offensive line how many times you're going to get hit in the Super Bowl. That's the same thing that happened to Carson Wentz last year when he was sacked 46 times in 14 games, 12 games, Charlton. He's going to Indianapolis, who has one of the best top offensive lines in the NFL. They have a tremendous running game. They have a receiving core that's intact. So he's going to be upgraded all the way around. So you're going to see the Carson Wentz that you saw in his second year in the NFL.
That's pretty tall words for a guy that doesn't have the confidence. But I wish him nothing but the best. That reunited might help. The Eagles will receive the 85th overall pick in this year's draft, and the conditional second round can become a first-round pick based on Wentz playing time. According to sources, Wentz needs to play at least 75% of the Indianapolis Colts offensive snaps, Big C, for the 2022 conditional pick, and to convey to a first round, according to sources. The pick also, and this is kind of silly, but the pick also could become a first rounder if Carson Wentz plays at least 70% of the snaps and the Colts reach the playoffs. But the worst in 2022 pick can be is a second rounder, meaning the Eagles are assured of netting two valuable picks for the former number 2 overall selection in the 2016 NFL Draft. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that pick will become a number 1 round draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles out of this trade because Wentz is going to Indianapolis as a starter. They don't have any other quarterbacks on the roster under contract. When you think about the quarterback retired that they had there, and
Philip
the
Rivers.
backup is a free agent.
Yeah.
So he's going in as the number 1 quarterback. He has to get injured not to be playing and take all those snaps.
Yeah.
But Indianapolis Colts just became a Super Bowl contender when they made this trade.
Really, if you look at, they had a chance to beat Buffalo last year. I know they had Philip Rivers who was doing his thing. If you look at some of the stats, like this on-field stats versus perception of success, Carson Wentz, 2,600, 20 yards passing last year. You could say his offensive line, but for whatever reason, maybe an offensive line got a lot of people in trouble. He's 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, Big C. You look at touchdown Philip Rivers, who retired, threw for 4,169 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And some people say they didn't have the best offensive line, but he still had better stats, almost double when it comes to passing than Carson Wentz. Big C, your thoughts?
They have a top 3 offensive line in Philadelphia. In Indianapolis. The Philadelphia Eagles last year played 9 different offensive line rotations. Think about that, 9. That means you had no continuity. Ask Patrick Mahomes, who threw two interceptions in the Super Bowl and no touchdowns, what happened when you have to change the offensive line structure in a game. Nobody even knows who the receivers were on the Philadelphia Eagles last year. He was throwing the ball to guys who had came in out of the parking lot. A couple of them had played quarterback when they were in college.
Yeah.
No one knows who they were. The running backs were always hurt. So to go to an organization that has established themselves through the draft, 2 solid running backs, 4 solid receivers, a good tight end, Charlton, and an outstanding offensive line that ranks in the top 3 in the NFL, you're going to see a resurgence of Carson Wentz. Also an improvement of Indianapolis with 12 win season.
That's a lot of improvement they got to do. But I wish him nothing but the best. I know before he got hurt down in Los Angeles, he was actually playing good, solid football. And sometimes going back and working with somebody that knows your name, it makes things better for you. But I want to ask you this question, because with so many guys that were not as good as touchdown Deshaun Watson, already moving on to different teams really over the last 2 years, Big C, give me your gut feeling now. Does it look more and more like Deshaun Watson is still going to be handcuffed down there in Houston, or will he get a chance to go where they have a better offensive line also, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, Charlton, he's not going to end up in Houston in 2021. He's going to move on. If you think about the first 2 quarterbacks that were drafted in the 2016 draft, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, they have moved on to new teams, Charlton.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson will move to a new team. It's just going to be right now it's down to what type of compensation package that can be put together either from the New York Jets or the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, that's something to behold. I'm looking forward to a 2021 season, and I wish everybody nothing but the best. I know they all work hard for it. I also want to take a little bit of time. I want to, it's Black History Month, Big C. I want to just say I was having a phone call with the Council of Elders in Northern California, and they have people that work at NASA, people that work in financial services all over the country. A lot of the men attended HBCUs, universities in the South. But today, NASA Space Exploration is a $2.7 billion trip, Big C, the whole program, to go where no rover has gone before, unlike Star Trek going where no man's gone before. Big C, they're looking for signs of life on Mars. It's called Perseverance. It left Earth's orbit on July 30th, 2020. Well, it just landed today on Mars, the 18th, 2021. It happened to be Black History Month. I think it's pretty far to go to try to find the Big C burger, Big C, but they are the first rover to follow the Big C Sportscast on Mars. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, ironically, Charlton, this is the 3rd rover that has landed on the planet Mars from the United States, the 2nd in the last decade. And ironically, this is the 3rd mission to Mars in the last month. The Chinese and the Russians have also sent up satellites to the planet, Charlton. So, it's becoming a frequent vacation spot.
Frequent vacation spot. Maybe that's where Ted Cruz really went, Big C. He wasn't trying to go to Mexico. Maybe he was trying to go to Mars. It's a lot colder on Mars than it is the United States of America. But really, really appreciate what NASA's doing. The NASA space exploration, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, if that makes sense to you. If they were to find any life on Mars, would they want to deal with anyone from the United States the way things have been in this country over the last 4 years? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's a lot of frequent flyer miles to get there. A few years involved in that.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a outlet on Mars. You haven't put one on the moon, and it's even closer.
Yeah, even closer. It's all fair and level war. I want to talk about something that's even closer than the moon, Big C, and it's happening in the world of NBA basketball. I know they've already talked about the NBA All-Star Game. It's actually going to take place, irrespective of what people think, it's going to take place in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to be March the 7th, and it's going to be a one-day event, unlike the prior events where people would come in and make it a whole week event. It's going to be a one-day event, and they're going to do the slam dunk event at halftime, and I guess they're selling it by saying that it's going to benefit the HBCUs, and also they're going to deal with a lot of COVID-19 equality, Big C, and equity, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's just an exhibition. It's not an all-star event that we've become accustomed to over the past couple of decades in America, Charlton. When you think about all the fanfare that goes on, we didn't see it at the Super Bowl this past year down in Tampa, Charlton. They didn't have all the pre-game events that go on the week before the Super Bowl. So this is just a made-for-television event.
Yeah, it's a made-for-it. And aren't they all? It's good to see players get together. It's just a lot of things are so different this year with people dealing with their families. So the NBA announced that today it's going to take place in Atlanta on the 7th of March. It's a celebration that's going to take place for the first time it's going to be with on-court action, Big C, beginning at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on TNT, that network. It's going to host this year's events. The NBA's National Basketball Players Association, they announced that they're going to commit more than $2.5 million in funds and resources toward the HBCUs. That's not a lot of money. I think they're already doing that. No one's going to knock the money, Big C. They're already doing that, but it's still a lot of the college will benefit some. So the players are going to play. They're going to try to keep the fans away. They're going to try to keep it as controlled as possible. And if whatever they're going to do to deal with the COVID, I think they have a better understanding how to deal with it now than they did when it all broke out, even though we've had so many cancellations of games. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the fans are going to stay away. They don't have a choice when you can't get into the arena.
Yeah.
So, like I said, they're going to have a broadcast that's going to resemble what you see now in games on television, a tarped-off arena, Charlton, with players, running around on the court, and that's going to be the extent of it. Will it have the excitement of games past? I doubt that.
Yeah, it's not going to have the excitement of games past, but NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said it's going to continue the annual tradition in celebrating the game for the greatest players in the world for a global audience. They may be the greatest players in the world, but they're not played as well as some of these great, when you think about it, some of these soccer guys. Maybe people should start learning to kick a soccer ball more than dunk a basketball. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they do. Soccer is the largest sport in the world, Charlton, so there's a lot of young kids that are out there playing soccer, and there's more soccer teams around the world professionally than any other sport.
Yeah, and it's a game that doesn't discriminate. All you need is some shoes to run around, if that makes sense to you, Big C. It's all fair and level war. NCAA college basketball is going to put 67 games in Indianapolis, Big C, due to COVID concerns. No more multi-city tournaments. So it's going to resemble what the NBA All-Star Game is doing. They're going to have the NBA All-Star Game in Atlanta, but the entire March Madness, if it still goes on, is going to be in the beautiful city of Indiana. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Indianapolis has enough arenas around in the surrounding area, Charlton, to host the tournament as well as the domes that they have there, Charlton, to play in. So they can accommodate all of that. They're not going to have the NFL Combine there this year, so they have the facilities to accommodate all the teams.
Yeah, they have all the facilities to do all that in the beautiful city of Indianapolis, Indiana. Big C, back to baseball. I do want to close with asking you some things about basketball because there's a big game in LA tonight, and it's going to be of epic proportions media-wise. Don't know if the game will match up to the media hype on it because some players are not going to be in the game. But Major League Baseball World Series Championship, Los Angeles Dodgers, we talked about some of the guys making so much money in the world of baseball. The odds are opening that they are expected to win as much as the 1999 New York Yankees, there's so much people putting money in betting that the Dodgers are going to repeat in this year's World Series, but it's not always easy. It was 32 years from the last win. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to think about any professional sport. It's about staying healthy. Ask the Kansas City Chiefs when they went into the Super Bowl. They were favored all season long to win.
Yeah.
But late in the season, Charlton, they were beset by injuries. And that offensive line was a shamble. They couldn't protect their quarterback.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in baseball. I mean, you get a pitcher that gets hurt. You get a couple of key players that get hurt, Charlton, and they can't get into the lineup. These are the things that you worry about. Odds are always one thing out there.
Yeah.
The health of the players is what's critical in somebody repeating in a championship.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a healthy team, ask the Golden State Warriors a couple of years ago up in Toronto.
Yeah.
You lose a key player, boom, all of a sudden you lose a championship.
Yeah, you can lose a championship when you lose a key player. And speaking of losing key players, the eyes of the NBA are on Los Angeles again. 17-time NBA world champion Los Angeles Lakers. Big C, they have a big game tonight. It's at Staples Center. There's a lot of big things that happen in Los Angeles, defending NBA champion Lakers, and they're going to be missing Anthony Davis when they take on the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets have put together a team on the East Coast, a lot like what Golden State had done just a few years ago when they brought Durant to go with the Splash Brothers, Curry and Thompson. Big C, there's talk that there may not be Durant playing in tonight's game, so it's going to be about Harden and Kyrie Irving against King James. If the Lakers can pull it off, and we'll see how deep they run. If the Lakers can pull it off, and ironically, they're a small favorite for some reason in tonight's game. Maybe that's shenanigans. It's going to be a lot about LeBron versus Kyrie, but it's really about who can pass the ball around and play defense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you look at this part of the NBA season, it's all about load management. Teams are never going to be at full force throughout until they get to the latter part of the season in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You're going to have players continuously taking nights off. You got injuries that have occurred with some of these teams. So, I mean, on paper it looks like a big game, but it all depends on what happens tonight after the tip-off.
Yeah, you look at Anthony Davis, he's sidelined until after the All-Star break that we talked about. They're going to be cautious with Davis. As you mentioned, he's always been hurt. Every year he has some type of hitch in his giddy-up, Big C. The Lakers have a 6-8. Think about this. They have a 6-8 at home before the All-Star break. So even if they fall tonight, they still have a lot of home cooking coming up. The Lakers are plus 5.3 points per game this season with LeBron James playing on the court without Davis. But you also, when you look at what's going on with them good old boys from Brooklyn, think about this, guys. They have a talented matchup, but you got to keep them all on the floor. They continue to be difficult to truly get a read on them. They are 10-1 against teams that are over 500, Big C. They're only 8-11 against teams that are below 500. So most likely they're going to win tonight, irrespective of what the odds makers have it. But that's a team that plays down to the competition and also up to the competition, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, are the teams playing better than they are, Charlton, when they beat them? I mean, you got to look at it from that aspect also. The odd makers are not the dummies in this situation. They're pretty intelligent. They know what's going on. And when you look at the struggles that the Lakers have had this year, you would have thought them coming off a championship, they'd be the best team in the NBA, and they're far from that, Charlton.
Yeah.
They've been fortunate on a few nights, but they have to stay injury-free the rest of the year.
Yeah, they really have to. I want to take you to, so that's going to be a great game in LA tonight, at least media-wise. We'll see what happens on the floor. I want to take you to the top of the mountain. There's a state called Utah, Big C. They have the Jazz. And this team, right now, they're rolling. They've won 18 of 19. It's fair to say it's came against some of the easier competition in the league. But as we just mentioned, the Brooklyn Nets against the losing teams, they have a losing record. Against the winning teams, they're winning. But you're thinking about the Jazz. It's not like Karl Malone and Stockton back in the day, but they are a very good team. I just know that sometimes NBA basketball, it's not about who has the best team on the floor. It's about who gets the calls. And I don't see a team like Utah going into LA and getting the calls that maybe a home team would get. But if they get that number one seed advantage, Big C, man, the last time they were back in the NBA Finals, they had the great Karl Malone. They're looking like they're headed back that direction, but I do think that they'll get knocked off as more teams fared out going down the back nine. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they have beaten up on the Lakers in the Staples Center. The problem with playing against the Utah Jazz is the size matchup, Charlton. They have a very huge lineup. They got three guys in their starting lineup above 6'10", Charlton, so it's a physical matchup problem when you have to face these teams. Not only that, when you look at Donovan Mitchell at guard, he has a 6'10" wingspan.
Yeah.
So they present a lot of defensive problems for their opponent, and it has showed up. There's nobody right now in the NBA that really matches up with them physically.
Yeah.
And so you think about Gobert shutting down the center of the lane, Charlton.
Yep.
They're a defensive force. Ingram can knock it down from the outside. This is a team, I mean, they're not in a major media market, but right now they're the best team in the NBA. And that carries some weight, because if they continue that, Charlton, the only thing that really seems to be in their way is staying healthy.
Yeah.
And they've been healthy. And so if they stay healthy this year, I mean, realistically, you got to look, other than media saying something, if it's on the court, they're the best. It's not about what happened last year. Right now is all that's relevant.
Yeah, a lot of people said that same thing about the Milwaukee Bucks, that they were the best team in the East last couple of years. But when it got time to playoffs, they didn't play the best. It's all fair and level war. It should be a great NBA season coming down the back nine with a golf metaphor. And I hope the game in L.A. tonight goes down to the final possession. It's all fair and level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm hoping up that everything warms up down there in the state of Houston, well, the state of Texas, Charlton, so that those athletes can get back out there, basketball and in college and pro and play, and hopefully some of those owners can warm up their ink pens and sign some contracts and trade a player or two.
Yeah.
But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders, for always being on the job.
Always being on the job. Congratulations, NASA, landing again on Mars. You can land on Mars, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.